Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking 3 genuinely chilling, unresolved mysteries from our source material. These aren't your typical bump-in-the-night ghost stories. These are accounts that prove the most ordinary, crowded, or picturesque places can entirely transform into literal nightmares the second the sun goes down. We're going to break down the timelines, the witness accounts, and the lingering questions that make these mysteries so incredibly enduring. So, let's dive into the dark.
But before we jump into the details, I want you to ask yourself a quick question. How much do you really trust your surroundings when you're completely alone at night? We all make decisions on autopilot, right? Taking the last train, hopping on a late bus, walking through a quiet park. We rely so much on our routines, but sometimes those mundane choices lead us straight into the unknown.
So, here is the roadmap for today's explainer. First up, we're hitting China for the impossible mystery of the doomed bus. Then, we'll head over to Mumbai for a midnight at Andheri Station. And finally, we're wrapping up in Konkan with a really dark tale of unforgiven guilt. All right, let's kick things off with our first case file, Route 375, better known as the doomed bus.
Picture this. It's a foggy, totally normal night in November 1995, and the last Route 375 bus departs the Summer Palace at 2 a.m. It picks up a few passengers, an old woman, a young guy, a couple. Just regular people heading home. But a bit further down the road, the driver stops for 3 mysterious figures hailing the bus. They were dressed in ancient Qing dynasty clothing. Now, the accounts note they looked incredibly dirty, and the 2 figures on the outside were physically holding up the middle guy, whose head was just slumped forward, his face completely hidden by his dark hair.
Then, out of nowhere, the tension just snaps. A black cat darts across the road, causing the driver to slam on the brakes. Instantly, the old woman falls into the young man and starts screaming that he stole her purse, even slapping him. She aggressively demands they both get off the bus to go straight to the police, and the confused young guy actually complies. But once they were alone on the dark road, her panic completely vanished. She told him there was no theft. She'd been watching those 3 men in ancient clothes, and when a gust of wind blew the hair from the middle figure's face, she saw he literally didn't have one. And worse, looking down, she realized none of the 3 had legs. They were floating. She staged the whole theft just to save their lives.
Naturally, the woman and the boy reported this to the police, who initially dismissed them as completely crazy. But the very next day, Route 375 was reported missing. When police finally located the missing bus, days later, submerged in a river 100 kilometers away from its intended route, the evidence they found completely defied all logic and physics.
Investigators uncovered 3 impossible facts about the recovery. First off, the gas tank? 0 petrol. It was filled entirely with blood. No joke. Second, they found 3 bodies inside: the driver, the conductor, and 1 unidentified man in ancient clothing. But despite being missing for only 48 hours, the bodies were in an advanced state of decomposition, something scientifically impossible in that time frame underwater. And finally, the bus had seemingly vanished from all surveillance grids exactly after the stop where the old woman and boy got off. No camera caught it traveling that massive 100-kilometer distance.
Okay, moving on to our second case. We're going from an isolated road in China to midnight at Andheri Station.
This one really illustrates that isolation is sometimes just a matter of timing. Take Devansh, a really tired salesman. His phone battery was dead, and he was feeling feverish. He arrived at Mumbai's Andheri station during the chaotic peak hours of 6 p.m. We're talking thousands of people creating this suffocating crush. So he decides to sit on a bench and wait for the crowd to thin out, but he accidentally falls asleep. When his eyes finally open, it's 1:30 a.m. The last train had already left. That bustling, chaotic station was now completely, horrifyingly silent and entirely empty.
So he's trapped with no trains until 4 a.m., right? Devansh tries to sleep on a stone bench, but soon he notices 3 pale men sitting nearby, just staring blankly at the tracks. He hears them whispering, which suddenly escalates into weeping, and then their screams actually start echoing through the empty station. All of a sudden, he feels a touch on his leg. The 3 men were right beside him, staring right into his eyes, and they asked him a chilling question in Marathi, which translates directly to, "Are you also going to die?"
Devansh ran in absolute terror, eventually passing out near a ticket counter until morning. When he later sought answers, a local railway night technician revealed a grim statistic: 2,000. That is the number of people who tragically lose their lives on the Mumbai local train network every single year. Falling, getting struck, or suffering fatal accidents on those exact tracks. According to the technician in our source material, the entities Devansh encountered are believed to be the trapped spirits of those very accident victims. Because their lives ended suddenly and violently in that space, they are bound to it. But they only rise up and make their presence known when the bustling station falls completely dead, using the silence of the night to mourn their own tragic ends.
All right, let's shift gears for our final analysis today. Welcome to the Curse of Konkan.
For this one, we're leaving City Steel behind and heading to the gorgeous Konkan region of Maharashtra. While it's famous for breathtaking daytime scenery, local lore absolutely insists it holds some unforgiving dark magic once night falls. When a woman named Arpita returned there after 20 years, she was greeted by an unfamiliar man claiming to be her childhood friend Abhishek.
So here's the timeline. Arpita had actually been sent to the city 20 years ago by her grandmother. Now back, she was just seeking a quiet moment to herself. Abhishek pointed her toward an abandoned house deep in the isolated forest. As the sun set, Arpita suddenly smelled fresh cigarette smoke. Following the scent upstairs, she noticed a small boy standing dangerously close to the edge of the abandoned house's roof.
Arpita panics, but before she can even move, the boy falls. She rushes downstairs and frantically picks up his broken body. The boy opens his eyes and delivers this haunting line. "When you didn't save my life in childhood, why are you trying to save me now?" Suddenly, Arpita is hit with a massive flashback of her own childhood fall. The boy in her arms completely vanishes, and the adult Abhishek walks out of the shadows. He drops a terrifying truth on her. He is the spirit of that little boy who died 20 years ago, and this forest is his domain.
Arpita absolutely bolts from the forest in terror and confronts her grandmother, who finally confesses the horrific truth. 20 years ago, both children fell from that exact roof. The grandmother found them bleeding. Fearing the village would blame her for the boy's severe injuries, she made a grim, unthinkable choice. She rescued Arpita, took her to the hospital, and then returned to the forest. While little Abhishek was still barely clinging to life, she buried him alive in the dirt. She then banished Arpita to the city, so the girl would never ever uncover the truth.
So, what does Arpita do? Prioritizing her city life and career, she decides to keep the horrific secret and just leave the village immediately. But as her car drives away, she looks back at the crowd of villagers seeing her off. And standing right there among the living, entirely visible to her, is Abhishek's ghost. He's just calmly waving goodbye to her. It's a chilling reminder that while you can run away from a place, you can never truly outrun the consequences of a buried sin.
And that brings us to our final warning. So, what is the crucial takeaway tying these three terrifying accounts together in our explainer today? Well, they serve as pretty grim cautionary tales. Whether it's the old woman on Route 375 trusting her gut to escape a doomed vehicle, Devansh learning that densely packed urban hubs hold the darkest echoes when completely emptied, or Arpita discovering that burying a secret doesn't kill it, it just makes it vengeful. Our environments absorb trauma, and our everyday choices dictate whether we become a part of that history.
Which brings us to our final thought. We navigate this world just assuming we are the only ones occupying our immediate space, right? But based on the lore we've explored today, I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. The next time you find yourself entirely alone in a dark, quiet place, are you absolutely sure you're the only one there? Thank you so much for exploring these mysteries with me today. Stay curious and stay safe.